Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin and I work in the membership team at Diabetes Australia. Thank you for attending this morning's webinar. Today we are joined by accredited exercise physiologist, Matt Lavis. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks very much, Erin, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us today for the presentation. Today we're going to be talking about diabetes and exercise within the context of the home, and talking about more specifically how to kind of create those good habits towards exercise and how to maybe break some of those poor habits towards inactivity that we see so much in current society. As Erin said, I'm an accredited exercise physiologist. I'm based in Wollongong. And I work for Diabetes Australia, running specifically the Beat It exercise and education program, which is a diabetes program, which I'll talk briefly about at the end of the presentation today. As Erin said, if you guys have any questions as we go, please pop them into the chat or the Q&A section at the top of your screen, and I'll address them all at the end of the presentation if they haven't already been answered. In terms of timing, it'll be about an hour in total, but we'll just see how we go in terms of how quickly it'll take me to get through the presentation, and that'll dictate how much time we have to kind of answer some of those questions at the end. And Erin, you just give me a shout if there's any issues. I'm going to minimize the video screen, so I'll just be looking at my presentation. So, all right. So Diabetes Australia acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this country. We acknowledge and recognise their connection to land, waters, winds and culture. We pay the utmost respect to them, their cultures and to their elders past and present. We extend the respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. We recognise that Australia is made up of hundreds of different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups, each with their own histories, culture, language and belief systems. Their relationship with country remains of utmost importance as it is the foundation for culture, family and kinships, songlines and languages. Diabetes Australia is committed to improving health outcomes for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples affected by diabetes and those at risk. So just a little bit of an overview of today's presentation. So I'm going to be discussing firstly the benefits of exercise. Then we're going to talk about the Australian Physical Activity Guidelines, diabetes considerations for exercise, so some things that we might need to be aware of before we jump in to an exercise program. We're going to go through some examples of home exercises and do a couple of those exercises here, which I encourage you guys to join me with. And we're going to talk about how to establish those exercise habits, because knowing exercises to do is one thing, but then actually doing them and applying them to your daily routine is another thing. We're going to talk briefly at the end about how to get a referral for an accredited exercise physiologist, the Beat It program, and then we'll do our Q&A section at the end. So just with our benefits of exercise, I'm sure these things aren't new to a lot of you guys, but I'll just run through them anyway, because I know I'm biased obviously as an exercise physiologist, but exercise really is a bit of a magic pill when it comes to managing or preventing so many different chronic diseases. So firstly, it reduces the risk of and helps to manage type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. It helps to maintain or improve blood pressure, cholesterol and blood sugar levels. It reduces the risk of some cancers. It prevents unhealthy weight gain and helps with weight loss. Obviously, we need to have a healthy diet most of the time to achieve that healthy weight loss as well. It helps to maintain strong muscles and bones. Prevents falls. These things become increasingly important as we get older, and it helps to create opportunities for socializing and meeting new people. I think that's a massive underrated thing about exercise, is that it ticks off that kind of social box as well. We create new friendships. It makes exercise a lot more enjoyable when we're doing it with other people that we get along well with. It keeps us accountable as well. Benefits of exercise, it also helps us develop and maintain physical and mental well-being. In terms of a bit more specific to diabetes, we know already from the research that the incidence of type 2 diabetes is inversely proportional to the participation in physical activity. So that's to say that someone who participates in more physical activity and exercise is less likely to develop type 2 diabetes, or if they do still have type 2 diabetes, their condition is going to be a lot better managed with a lot lower risk of other comorbidities or things kind of developing as a result. It decreases blood glucose levels. Obviously, this isn't specific to just type 2 diabetes, it's for type 1 diabetics as well. It increases muscle mass. So when we increase muscle mass, essentially what we're doing is we're increasing the engines or the car parks. They're kind of the analogies that we use in diabetes education. So our muscles are kind of like the engines that can process that fuel, which is our blood glucose. But our muscles are also a store for our glucose. So essentially once we burn off that fuel, we have more car parks for us to kind of park that blood glucose in the muscle as glycogen. It increases insulin sensitivity for up to 48 hours after a single bout of exercise. I think this is a really important one because it just shows that we need to be exercising at least every second day in order to maximize that benefit for that insulin sensitivity. And that you don't just get the benefits of exercise when you're doing the exercise. You actually see that benefit. Your body metabolically is behaving in a different way, I guess, in that 48 hours after exercise. So we're more sensitive to insulin. We're going to continue to, process that blood glucose differently than if we're inactive. It reduces that visceral fat, so that fat that we carry around our midsection. All the research kind of shows that it's that visceral fat that we have around our organs that's a really dangerous fat. It makes us more resistant to insulin, that fat, but it also increases our cardio risk factors, for things like stroke and heart attack as well. And then finally, it also reduces those comorbidities or complications. So they can be microvascular and macrovascular. So things like retinopathy or peripheral neuropathy. So damage to those nerves and tiny blood vessels, in our distal limbs or in our eyes, all those kind of things. So there's a whole lot of them, and it helps to reduce the risk of all of them. I just wanted to discuss briefly, just before we kind of jump into the Australian Physical Activity Guidelines, the terminology that we might use a little bit today, because I think it's important to kind of distinguish what we mean when we talk about physical activity, exercise, and incidental activity. So hopefully some of you may be familiar with some of these terms already, but I just wanted to run through them. So when we talk about physical activity, we're talking about any activity that requires the body to move. It's comprised of kind of the two categories, which are exercise, which is our structured physical activity. These things are planned activity that is done on the purpose to improve our health and fitness. So I guess, for example, if we were talking about going for a walk, if we're going for a walk, a brisk walk around the block, trying to improve our health and fitness, that would be exercise. But if we're just walking, I don't know, around the office or around the supermarket, that's more incidental physical activity, which is that unplanned everyday activities that involve movement. It's usually undertaken as part of normal daily tasks. I want you guys to take a quick minute just to think about what kind of exercise you perform through the week. So what kind of structured physical activity you do that's with the purpose to improve your health and fitness. And then have a think about the incidental activity as well. So it might be things like if you live in a unit, that's 3 floors up and you have to take the stairs. It could be things like that. So if you've got a pen and paper handy, it might be useful for some of our activities later today as well. Maybe just jot down a few of the things that you already do in terms of exercise. You might be part of a walking group and you go for a walk, twice a week with a friend and then get a coffee afterwards, and then some of that incidental activity as well. I want you to also have a bit of a think about, when you could potentially dedicate more time to participating in exercise, because I think it's all well and good. Everyone wants to participate in more exercise. Everyone wants to be fitter. Everyone wants to manage their diabetes better. But we need to have a little bit of a plan about when we can dedicate time to that, when and where. We'll discuss that a little bit later in today's presentation, but I just want you to do a quick brainstorm about when you might be able to slip in some exercise. And it's important to note as well that we don't need to have a big chunk of time to do that exercise. We don't need to have an hour or even half an hour, even just like 5 or 10 minutes scattered throughout the day can make a massive difference because it all adds up. And then I also want you to have a quick think about, not just where and when you perform this exercise, but would you need any kind of equipment, whether they're, walking shoes or weights or a TheraBand or a chair, anything like that, what kind of equipment you might need to participate in that exercise that you're interested in doing, whether that's aerobic stuff or resistance work or balance work or flexibility work. So just jot a few things down if you've got a pen and paper handy. Otherwise, maybe just hold those things in your mind as we work our way through the presentation today. So with our Australian physical activity guidelines, there's a few guidelines. There's kind of three main ones, but these kind of things are, I guess, a goal that we want to try to work towards. They're not the be all and end all, but I think if everyone achieved the Australian physical activity guidelines consistently, we would see massive improvements on, a nationwide scale of not just, diabetes prevention and management, but also all those other chronic diseases that I kind of mentioned earlier and those complications and comorbidities. So as a kind of general rule, doing any physical activity is better than doing none. So even if you're not meeting the activity guidelines, doing any is still better than doing none. I think some people can have occasionally a bit of a defeatist attitude where it's like, oh, if I can't meet the minimum guidelines, then there's no really point in doing any. And that couldn't be more wrong. Like I said, it all adds up, even if you're just starting with half an hour, a couple of days a week of exercise or even less than that. It's a good starting point that we can build from, and your body is still benefiting from that exercise. So just remember that doing something is always better than doing nothing. And we can start slowly and build gradually up towards that recommended amount or even beyond. We want to try to be active on most and preferably all days of the week, especially as people living with diabetes. You guys would want to try to maximize on that insulin sensitivity, which, as I said before, can last for up to 24 to 48 hours after you perform exercise. So in order to maximize on that benefit, we want to try to exercise at least every second day, if not every day or most days of the week. So guideline one is towards our aerobic exercise. So hopefully, as you guys are aware, our aerobic exercise is that exercise that kind of works our heart and our lungs. We're talking about rhythmic, kind of longer, sustainable exercise such as walking or jogging, cycling, swimming. If you're got a Stairmaster at the gym or an elliptical machine or something like that, they're all excellent examples. With our aerobic guideline, we want to try to work for 30 minutes, 5 times a week at a moderate intensity. So when we talk about moderate intensity, we can use what we call the talk sing test. So if I was going for a casual stroll, along the beach or something like that, just at a real leisurely pace, I'm stopping, I'm resting as I go. That might be more so on the light side of aerobic exercise intensity. The moderate intensity, if I was, say, walking with a friend a bit more briskly, and I could maintain a conversation at that intensity, but I wouldn't be able to sing because I'd be too breathless to do that. That would be more in that moderate zone. So that's a good way of knowing just kind of when you're doing exercise casually, whether you're sitting in that moderate zone or not. If you could sing, it's probably a bit too light. And if you're so out of breath that you can't maintain a conversation, then you'd probably be in the vigorous, so the higher zone, which is good too. It just means you may not be able to maintain that for as long. So on the right-hand side of the slide there, you can see we're trying to accumulate 150 to 300 minutes. So 150 minutes is kind of that minimum. So that's 30 minutes, 5 days a week, and building up towards 300 minutes a week. That's more, if you're trying to improve your fitness further, or particularly for weight management. If you're trying to lose weight, we want to try to work and build up towards that 300 minutes. So that's 60 minutes, 5 days a week. And that doesn't need to be in those 60-minute chunks, as I said, or 30-minute chunks. We can do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunchtime, 10 minutes in the afternoon or in the evening after dinner, and you'll meet that guideline. So as long as we're working at that moderate intensity, light intensity probably isn't going to get you that same kind of physiological benefit. And then if we're working at a rigorous intensity, which is kind of at that point where you can't sing and you can't probably maintain a conversation at that intensity either, you actually don't need to work for as long. So it could be 75 to 150 minutes a week. So that's about, I think, 15 minutes, 5 days a week of vigorous intensity exercise. It's not very long, up to, I believe, half an hour, 5 days a week of vigorous intensity exercise. But obviously, you're working a lot harder, your heart rate's a lot higher, your breathing rate's a lot higher, you're working a lot harder physiologically. We don't need to work for as long, and it may not be as maintainable for as long. So if you're just starting off, it might be good to start at more of that light or moderate intensity. Try to start building towards that 150 minutes, and then you can go beyond that with the 300 minutes. And then once your fitness is improved, that's maybe when you can look at working at that vigorous intensity. With our resistance exercise guidelines, so when we're talking about resistance exercise, we're talking about things that require us to work against some kind of resistance, such as a band, a weight, or gravity. Resistance exercises are designed to increase your body's strength, power, and muscular endurance. You might build a bit of muscle as well, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really important for storing glucose. We have those car parks, as I said before in that analogy, and we also have more engines. So building muscle mass is becoming, the research is supporting it more and more. It used to just be more towards the aerobic side to managing diabetes, but the research is showing that resistance exercise is very important as well, because we want to maintain that lean muscle mass, or even build that lean muscle mass in order to maintain those blood glucose levels. So with our guidelines for this, we want to try to work for 2 or 3 days a week, non-consecutive days, so it gives our muscles time to recover. And we want to aim for about 8 to 10 exercises, doing about 1 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions. So I'll walk you guys through some good resistance exercises that we can do at home later in the presentation today. And for those who maybe aren't too familiar with resistance exercises, 10 to 15 repetitions. So for example, if I was doing a bicep curl and I'm holding the weight, every time I'm lifting up, that's 1 repetition, and I'm aiming for that kind of 10 to 15 rep range. We'll talk a little bit about the intensity for our aerobic and our resistance exercise in a minute. And then our third guideline is about reducing sedentary behavior. So as I'm sure you're all aware, sedentary behavior is used to describe kind of those low energy expenditure moments in your day, like sitting when you're at work or in transit, at home watching TV, or in your leisure time, reading the paper, eating meals, all that kind of thing. Unfortunately, technology and labor saving devices have made life a lot easier, but it's also made us a lot more inactive in our daily lives compared to even 50 years ago. So on average, and this is quite a scary stat, Australians spend around 7 to 10 hours sitting per day. And those who work in sedentary jobs, so those who work in an office job or something like that, they can sit upwards of 12 hours a day. So it's more than half of our day. If you're thinking you're sleeping, about 8 hours a night, that doesn't leave you much time to kind of be moving around at all. So, when we're sitting, it actually has a similar kind of mortality risk rate to smoking. So we want to try to move as much as possible throughout the day. I know that's somewhat unavoidable with our sedentary jobs, but we can do things to kind of mitigate that risk by, setting timers to get up frequently, having a standing desk. Every 30 minutes, for example, we can get up for a couple of minutes and just do some movements or do some exercises at home or in the office, going for a walk at lunchtime. All those things are really going to help. And being active for 30 minutes for structured physical activity is obviously beneficial, but it doesn't unfortunately counteract the sedentary behavior throughout the rest of the day. So it's going to be good, but it's not going to completely take away that negative effect. So that's why it's so important to try to keep moving throughout the day. So we really want to try to minimize the amount of prolonged sitting. And if we have to be prolonged sitting, we want to try to break up that as much as possible at work, at home, and in our leisure time as well. Some good examples as well of how we can make ourselves less sedentary might be things like actively taking the stairs at the office instead of taking the lift. Maybe parking your car further away from the grocery store or from the office or whatever, so you have to walk further to get there. This is just a little bit of an overview of those physical activity guidelines. So you're welcome to, I think this session is being recorded today, so when it gets posted online or emailed out to you guys, you're welcome to go through the presentation and take some screenshots or write some of this stuff down, because I know it's a lot of info kind of dumped on you guys all at once. So this is just a little bit of a summary. So with our aerobic exercise, we want to try to do most, if not all days of the week. We're aiming for an RPE, which is that rate of perceived exertion. It's basically a rating from 1 to 10, how hard you feel you're exercising. I'll talk about that on the next slide. But we want to be working at a moderate intensity. So remember, moderate intensity is that talk sing test. So we're able to talk, but we're not able to sing because we're breathless. We want to try to do at least 30 minutes if we can, but even if we need to break it into smaller bouts of 10 minutes, multiple times a day, that's fine. And then with our type, we've got, walking, jogging, cycling, swimming, aqua aerobics, all fantastic. Things that we can do socially as well. With our resistance exercise, 2 to 3 days a week, moderate intensity as well on that RPE scale, especially when we're starting out. We want to do 8 to 10 exercises with 8 to 10 repetitions for 2 to 4 sets for each exercise. And then we can use things like weights, bands, machines if you've got a gym membership or you've got something at home like that. But there's also so many fantastic body weight exercises that we can do as well. And then our incidental activity, so that kind of activity that we just do randomly throughout the day that does involve physical movement, but it's not planned for fitness. We wanted to be doing, maximizing that incidental activity every single day. We can do so by breaking up our periods of prolonged sitting, so setting alarm every 20 or 30 minutes, where you can really lock in and be productive, and then give yourself a few minutes to kind of move around and break up that sitting. And then we can do things like gardening, shopping, laundry, cooking, and all that kind of thing, that incidental activity. So if we can meet these guidelines, as I said before, I think we'd be much healthier as a society. And it is a guideline. So if you're not meeting those guidelines, that's okay. We need to start somewhere, but we want to try to work up towards it if we can. And just remember that any exercise is better than none. So even if it's just 10 minutes a couple times a week, that's still going to make a big difference and kind of all add up. Just with our RPE scale that I was mentioning before, so that rating from 1 to 10, we can use this scale to kind of measure how hard we're exercising for both our aerobic exercise and for our resistance exercise as well. We want to aim for a moderate intensity, where we're lightly puffing, but you can still, talk and walk. So as you can see in the green on our little scale there, that moderate activity, you're breathing heavily, but you can have a conversation. That's about a 4 to 6 out of 10. You can work to those higher intensities as you start to build a bit of your fitness. I know that the people tuning in today may have different levels of, starting levels of fitness. They may be very active or they may not be active at all. But, we all have to start somewhere. Just make sure that you're exercising safely. We're going to talk about that a little bit next. Essentially, when we're doing our exercise, if we're going to do it though, we don't want to be working at that 1 to 3 if we can avoid it, because we want to try to maximize that benefit. So if you're going for a walk, for example, it's not just a very casual stroll. We want to try to be a bit more brisk to the point where we're a little bit breathless, just slightly, maybe light sweating, that kind of thing, and then build from there. So obviously, with diabetes, with type 1 and type 2, there are several kind of considerations for exercise. And the beauty of that home exercise that we're going to be discussing today is that you can kind of do it at any time in the comfortable home environment. But before we dive in, we need to, establish whether or not exercise is suitable for you at this point in time. As I said, people may have different fitness levels. Their diabetes may be, I guess, less or more severe. And we need to make sure that we're exercising safely if we're going to jump into it. So I guess a few considerations that you might need to ask yourself before you jump into any type of exercise, not just home exercise, is do you have any pre-existing injuries or diabetes-related complications? These may impact your ability to exercise or the types of exercise you can complete. Have you experienced a hypoglycemic episode before? So where your blood sugars are dropping below a 4 millimole per liter? And have you had a hypo that's serious enough that you need to kind of take action for it or you needed assistance? Do you experience recurring frequent hypos? If you're experiencing frequent hypos, exercise may not be safe to complete unsupervised. So maybe go and have a chat to your GP or an accredited exercise physiologist about how you can exercise safely. And are you taking any kind of glucose lowering medications? So they can be typically your insulin, or they could be sulfonylureas as well. These are things that put us at higher risk of having a hypo episode. So if you're taking those medications, you might need to make sure that you have a hypo kit handy. So some short acting or rapid acting carbohydrates such as jelly beans or a gel or something like that, and some long acting as well. And especially if we're at high risk of having a hypo, if you had them frequently or if you're on those blood glucose lowering medications, it's especially important to check your blood glucose levels before and after, or maybe even during exercise as well, depending on the duration. And another question that you can ask yourself is, have you participated in an exercise program before? and have you done that unsupervised? It's important to be comfortable, to exercise without that supervision. If you're not quite comfortable, maybe seeing an exercise physiologist or having a chat with your GP may be an important step that you need to take before we can jump into intense home exercise. The things that we're going to go through today are, low intensity, low impact resistance exercise. So hopefully they'll be safe for everyone who's tuning in from home. But if you're at risk or you've had frequent hypos, maybe just take care with our exercises today or don't participate, and have a chat to your GP or your endocrinologist, or if you have an accredited exercise physiologist, have a discussion with them before jumping into exercise. It's good to have that kind of guidance, especially if we're trying to jump into a frequent, maybe more intense exercise regime. But hopefully there's a level of intensity that everyone can start at and do so safely. There may be some other considerations that you might have, such as wearing footwear or having some kind of support nearby, depending on your balance too. All right, so in terms of creating a home gym, I want you guys to think about the equipment that you have at home already. So if you've got that pen and paper handy, you can jot down a few things. What do you think you could use for a home exercise session? If you can jot down as many as you can, I might just give you a quick minute. I think people think that when you think about the exercise equipment that's in a gym, we're thinking about equipment that's really expensive, it costs thousands of dollars. It can sometimes be a bit tricky to navigate and understand how to set up that equipment. And we have, exercise machines that are targeting every part of the body. That's what a lot of people think about when they think about exercise equipment, and they think, well, how can I exercise at home if I don't have, an exercise bike or a treadmill, or I don't have, a chest press machine, all this expensive equipment. I think people undervalue what they already have at home, and we're going to go through a few of those things today. So hopefully you've got a couple things down. Water bottle. When we think about weights, we often think about, like I said, those expensive weights, but things like water bottles or cans of soup or passata or whatever, they all hold mass. Things like, you might have a spare brick or two at home in the backyard. You can put that in a Coles shopping bag or in a backpack and use that for resistance exercise as well. Things like a chair. We can do so many exercises from a chair. Gravity is such an awesome form of resistance that we have with us all the time, and I think it's really underrated. You may have a TheraBand or an exercise band. Basically, these are rubber bands that different colors usually represent a different level of resistance. So the yellow one, in that case, being the lighter one, then red, then green, and then blue. And then in the most common type of bands, there's a black band as well. That's usually the heaviest one. They're an awesome form of resistance exercise that we can use in lots and lots of different ways, not just for our upper body, but for our lower body as well. If you've got one at home, hopefully you've got one handy that we can use for our exercises today, because we might use one if you've got one, but we'll just see how we go. You might have an exercise ball at home as well. Really awesome for, core exercises or lower body exercises as well. We can use it in lots of different ways. We've got our traditional kind of dumbbell weights as well. Some people might have a couple kilos around the house. And then we've got things like stairs as well. You might have a stationary bike or some little pedals or a skipping rope or a small stool or a step that we can use for exercise as well. Hopefully you guys might even have a suggestion or two that I haven't just mentioned now written down, or that at least in your head. All right, we're going to do some exercise now. So I just wanted to say again, before we jump into this, if you don't think it's appropriate for you to do these exercises or safe, I don't want you to participate today. But just, have a chat with your GP or an AEP before trying to jump into a structured exercise program if you have maybe some more serious considerations. If you're doing the exercises today, I want you guys to stop if you're feeling any pain, you have an injury, or your blood glucose levels are unstable or are too low or too high. And this is just a demonstration, so only do as much as you can or feel like, but we'll go nice and slow, and we'll take it nice and easy. I just wanted to show you guys a few simple exercises that we can do in the home environment. So our very first exercise, our sit to stands, I think it's one of the best exercises that we can do at home, especially for people as we get older. Maintaining our leg strength is really important for our balance and for our falls prevention and for all those activities that we tackle in our daily life. I can't see what I look like on the camera, so hopefully I'm not cutting myself off completely. I imagine you guys are sitting at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go for 10 repetitions of our sit to stands from our chair. So just count along with me. Like I said, if you can't do 10, that's fine. If you can, let's go. So we're just going to be standing up. You can go hands across the chest using no upper body for assistance. So that's 2. If you've got armrests on your chair, you can use that chair for resistance if you need. I may lose count while doing some of these exercises. Sorry, guys. So just bear with me. I think that's about 6. We'll go 4 more. You can make this exercise easier by heightening your chair. So if you've got a cushion or something like that you can put on the chair. Last one. Nice work. And we'll just have a little bit of a rest before we go into our next exercise. Like I said, I can't see myself right now, so hopefully I'm not completely cutting off the exercise. Hopefully you guys can see it all, but hopefully it should be pretty explanatory from our pictures as well. With our sit to stands, we can make that one harder as well by doing more of a butt tap, where we're only just tapping the chair with our bottom when we're not sitting down fully. Or we can remove the chair altogether and do, a mini squat or a full depth squat if you're, able to do so. In terms of making it easier, as I said, we can use chair with armrests. We can heighten that chair, or we might want to use a bar or a rail or something like that in front if it makes it a bit easier than using the armrests. 10 repetitions to 15 repetitions is kind of the guideline for our resistance exercise. But as I said, it's better to do something than nothing. So even if you're not able to get to 10, even if it's only 5 sit to stands, that's still going to be beneficial, and we can build from there. All right, for our next exercise, we're going to go into a TheraBand bicep curl. If you don't have a band handy at home, that's totally fine. You can just use a water bottle or even just go through the movement just against gravity, just to kind of build a bit of muscle memory and to focus on practicing what you need to focus on. So I've got my band here. I'm not sure if you guys can see well. I've got a nice green band. I'm just going to put that band underneath my foot, and I'm holding the band down by my sides, and then I'm lifting that band up towards my shoulders while keeping my elbows stuck by my side. So it's really important when we do our resistance exercise to focus on doing it with control. We're not rushing. We're trying to keep those muscles under tension for longer. Okay, so we can go a bit quicker on the way up, but we want to have slow control on the way down. I think I've got about 3 more. Sit 9 and 10. Very good. Nice work. Hopefully you guys can feel, if you did that one with a band, those muscles in the front of your arms and your biceps. I'm doing a little bit of work. For our next exercise, we're going to do a calf raise. So this is a really good exercise that's strengthening your calves and your back of your lower legs. So we can do this while holding onto some support, so a chair in front, or if you've got a wall nearby or a rail. I really like doing this exercise, just after I brush my teeth or when I'm standing at a kitchen bench or something like that. So we're going to be coming up onto our tippy toes and slowly controlling that lower. We'll go for 10 again. Like I said, at home, doing these yourself, depending on your fitness level, you may want to make it easier or harder by reducing or increasing those reps. We can make calf raises harder as well by doing it off a step. So having kind of your heels hanging off the edge of a step and your toes on that step, and that allows us to get a little bit deeper into that stretch, kind of increases that range of the exercise a little bit more. Okay, let's go for 3 more here. Like I said, counting and talking isn't my strong suit. And last one. Nice work. You might be able to feel that one a little bit in the back of the legs. That's good. You might get a little bit sore after you start to introduce some resistance exercise. That's totally normal. That's basically what we're doing when we're doing resistance exercise, is we're kind of doing a little bit of micro damage to the muscles. And that's totally fine. That micro damage is needed in order for our muscles to build back, bigger and stronger. So a little bit of soreness a day or even 2 days after you do your exercises is totally normal. We don't want it to have, we don't want to have too much of that muscle soreness that it restricts us from doing our normal activities, but a little bit is totally fine. And usually your body adapts pretty quickly. So you might be really sore after the first time you do it, but then doing the same session again later that week, your body will recover and bounce back much quicker, just because it's kind of ready and it's starting to build some of that physical capacity. We might go for a chest press next. So with our band, we're going to pop it behind our back, up underneath our armpits. We're going to be punching that band out in front. You can also do a wall push-up or a push-up from a bar or something like that. And this is working the muscles in the front of the shoulders, but particularly in our chest, in our pec muscles. Same with our push-ups, same kind of thing. We're using those pushing muscles in the front. And we'll go one last one. Nice work. Cool, and we'll have a little rest there. I want to keep moving with things that we have time for our Q&A section at the end. But some other good examples for exercise you could do at home might be that standing TheraBand row that you can see on the screen. And then in terms of cardio, because these are resistance exercises, in terms of cardio, you may not have a bike or a treadmill at home, but you can do things like marching on the spot, so marching up and down with your legs and your arms, or even doing like a star step out to the side where we're lifting our arms and then stepping back and lifting our arms. Basically, any kind of rhythmic thing that's getting your heart rate increased is going to be some good cardio at home. But I think marching on the spot or brisk walking up and down a corridor are a really good place to start. Just in terms of some tools that we can use for our home exercise workouts, this is I'm not sponsored by a Tabata Timer app or anything like that. This is just a really simple app that's free that I like to use, and I've used in the past for my diabetes classes and my beta classes, or even just my own general fitness and workouts. Essentially, we can set a little timer that tells us how long we need to work for, how long we get to rest for. There are tons of awesome apps aside from the Tabata Timer, such as MyFitnessPal or smartwatches. A lot of them have, Fitbits and Apple Watches have kind of little workout timers in them as well. So this is what I like to use. You don't have to, but it's just a suggestion, how we can kind of track our workouts and keep us on time, because counting in your head or just going off the clock can be a little bit distracting. We want to really just focus on the exercise and have that timer taken care of. So this is just a little example of a home workout that you could do that might take about 40 minutes with some rest as well. Obviously, it's important, depending on your fitness level, not to jump straight into this, but I do like this kind of format because when we're working on a timer instead of reps, we can just focus on working as hard as possible during that time, or as hard as you'd like to, I suppose. And then the time will kind of tell us when to move on to our next one. So for example, for this one, we're doing 3 rounds of each exercise for 45 seconds. So marching on the spot, we'd be marching on the spot for 45 seconds. We'd get our 15 seconds of rest, and we'd repeat that another 2 times until we've done it 3 times in total. And then we'd move over to the paired exercise, which is like an elevated bench push-up, where we're putting our hands on the bench, we're doing a push-up forward and back, or you could do it against a wall or our chest press or something like that. And then once we've done 3 rounds of 45 seconds on the bench push-ups, we're moving on to a stationary bike. These are just suggestions, these exercises, but might be a good one to kind of screenshot and play around and substitute in whatever exercises you'd like. But we've got a good mix here with some aerobic exercises all down that left side and some resistance exercises all down that right side. I wanted to talk now about our kind of habit formation, and I think this is a really important thing because, as I said at the start, everyone has that goal of being more active or losing weight or improving their fitness or managing their diabetes better. But we need to have the kind of plan in order to get there. It's not, having a goal is great, but we need to have the plan and we need to really hone in on the process to get there. So this is called the habit loop. I've taken this from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a fantastic book. It's just about, it's not about exercise specifically, it's just about any habits that we're trying to implement or any habits that we're trying to break as well. So really, really useful book that I use a lot of the concepts with my clients. As you can see in the orange, we've got the habit loop. So number 1 is the cue, number 2 is the craving, number 3 is a response, and number 4 is a reward. So essentially that cue triggers a craving, which motivates that response, and that provides a reward. And that kind of feeds back into the cue again because we know that we got that reward. So when we get that same cue again, we associate it with the reward, and then we kind of cycle back through again. And then in the blue, we have what's called our 4 laws of behavior change. So we've got, if we want to actually change our behavior, we need to, number 1, we need to make it obvious for that cue. We need to make it attractive for that craving. We need to make it easy for the response, and we need to make it satisfying for the reward. And we're going to talk about this in the context of exercise, but you could use it in the context of anything. And we will discuss as well breaking bad habits too. So I got a little quote here from the book by James Clear, which is about about setting those goals, but focusing on the systems instead. So in the book, he says that goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you, the problem is your system. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, because you don't have because you have the wrong system for change. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your system. So it's really important to have systems in place that encourage the positive behavior that we're trying to achieve. So just with your pen and paper handy, and I'm conscious of the time, I want to give you guys time for some questions at the end. We want to really write down for number one, for making it obvious, we really want to have a definitive time and place that you'll exercise. So if you've got a pen and paper handy, or maybe you can just do it mentally if you don't, I want you guys to think about, a certain time or place that you're going to do exercise throughout the week. And that doesn't need to be out in a park or anything like that. It could just be something really simple at home. So it could be, say, for example, after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 of my calf raises. Could be something really simple like that. So that's what we call habit stacking. We're stacking a new habit and attaching it onto an existing habit. Another good one might be when the kettle is boiling, we are marching on the spot on that until that kettle is finished boiling. So these kind of incidental things that we're mixing throughout the day, they all add up, as I said before. And we want to make that cue really obvious as well. So it could be something simple like putting your weights or your TheraBand in front of the TV so that when you're watching the TV, even though you're being more inactive, you can do some exercises during the ad breaks. For number two, for making it attractive, we want to pair an action you want to do with one that you need to do. So we want to join a culture where the desired behavior is a normal behavior. So such as like a walking group or something like that. You can do something you enjoy directly before or after doing that exercise too. So with a walking group, I have ladies from my Beat It group, for example, who started their own walking group just on a Saturday morning, and they all love it because they go and get a coffee afterwards, and it's kind of ticking that social box as well. So they're making it exercise attractive because they're doing it together. It's enjoyable because they can kind of chat and catch up, and then they've got their little reward. They've got their coffee at the end too, which is great. So it doesn't need to be a coffee. It doesn't need to be something that we consume. It can be just that you really enjoy going for a walk to the beach and you love the view that you get at the end of your walk or something like that. In terms of number three, so making it easy, we want to try to reduce friction as much as possible. So we want to decrease the number of steps between you and exercise. So this could be putting your exercise clothes out on your dresser the night before if you're trying to go for a walk early in the morning or something like that. You could have your exercise equipment set up. So like I said, having your equipment right in front of the TV or on the, somewhere really obvious attached to a door handle or a rail that you go past all the time, so that it's constantly kind of reminding us that we need to be doing that exercise and we can do it easily. We don't have that exercise tucked away in the attic or, in a spare room every time we're not using it. So we kind of get that constant reminder. And we can always tell ourselves that kind of little 2-minute rule with exercise that we're just going to do 2 minutes of that activity. We're just going to do 2 minutes. And then usually once you start and you get going with that 2 minutes, it's much easier to just continue for another little period. It's just getting over that initial hump to begin. That's the hardest. And then with number 4, we want to make it satisfying. So we want to give ourselves that immediate reward once you complete your exercise target. So that could be having a visible calendar on your phone or on your fridge that we're ticking off the days that we've met our exercise target. It could be every time you do exercise, you put $10 into a holiday fund or something like that, that after a few months, that's what we are rewarding ourselves with, is like a cheeky holiday somewhere or something like that. You guys can come up with your own ideas for that because everyone has their own rewards, I guess, that they can use for motivation. When we're getting rid of a bad habit, we kind of need to do the opposite of these things. So instead of making it obvious, we want to try to make it invisible. So for example, I'm just going to use the example of chocolate. So with chocolate, we don't want to have it obvious. You wouldn't want to have, if I had chocolate on my kitchen counter or my dining table or next to me at my work desk, I'd be destroying that chocolate bar in an instant. It wouldn't last probably an hour. But if I make it invisible, if I put it in the very top uppermost reaches of my cupboard, or better yet, I don't actually have the chocolate bar here at home. I have it, I don't know, I have it in my at my office or something like that. At work as opposed to at home like I am today. I can't actually get to that. So we want to try to make it invisible. Number 2, we want to try to make it unattractive. Number 3, we want to try to make it as difficult as possible to make those unhealthy choices. And then number 4, we want to make it unsatisfying as well. So I'm just mindful of the time here. I want to give you guys some time for questions at the end, so I'll just keep moving forward. This is just a quick quote from Atomic Habits that I'll finish up this little section on. So every action that you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. No single instance will transform your beliefs. But as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity. This is one reason why meaningful change does not require radical change. Small habits can make a meaningful difference by providing evidence of a new identity. And if a change is meaningful, it is actually big. That's the paradox of making small improvements. So we don't need to make crazy big changes. Small changes every single day, building those habits will, create those bigger changes without us even realizing. So just with making a plan, if you've got that pen and paper handy, I want you guys to think about what you need to do to make it happen. Do you need any exercise equipment? Do you need to set up a weekly walk with a friend or something like that, like an actual scheduled appointment? Do you need to go and get a gym membership? Do you need to go and get yourself a TheraBand online or from your local, Kmart or physio clinic or something like that? We want to set a start date, hopefully sooner than later. We want to map out our week. So having a little calendar where we're crossing off the times that we're committed to other things. That could be work, it could be family, it could be appointments, it could be meals. And then picking out those gaps where we can actually commit to exercise. And I want you to book in your exercise appointments like they were a doctor's appointment. So if you had a doctor's appointment, you'd have it written in your little diary. You might have a notification on your phone or something like that. I want you to treat your exercise appointments the same way. Having an accountability buddy is really important. So it could be your partner, it could be a close friend, it could be your allied health professional, dietitian, exercise physiologist, what have you. But we want to have someone that we're kind of working along this journey with and they can keep you accountable. So if you're got an appointment, your exercise appointment to go for a walk with a friend on a Saturday morning, you're accountable to be there because you've got your friend relying on you as well. It's not just about you and your own motivation to do it on the day. And then we want to have backup plans. So if the weather's crappy and you have that walk planned with a friend, what's the backup plan? Maybe they can come around to your house and you do a short, half an hour exercise circuit. Just really briefly, should weight loss be the prime focus? I know weight loss is a major focus for a lot of people with diabetes specifically. When they're thinking about exercise, they think about losing weight. The research shows that losing weight, that fat mass is really important for our health. It is really beneficial, but it isn't the be all and end all. So we can still see the benefits of exercise even if there's no change on the scale. So I've just got a few things here that you can read through. A lot of them are to do with our attitudes towards exercise, our energy levels, our improvements in quality of sleep. We may have increases in muscle mass and decreases in fat loss that aren't actually decreases in fat mass, that aren't actually shown on the scale, but they are improvements that are happening within our body, and that insulin sensitivity increase and that decreasing fasting glycemia. All these things are kind of invisible things that we don't see when we stand on a scale. So yes, weight loss is important for managing diabetes. Even just 5 to 7% of body weight loss can be really beneficial. But it's not the be all and end all. So I don't want it to be the entire focus. We want sustainable, long-term and healthy lifestyle change. This may not be shown on the scales, is essentially the take home with that. If you guys were looking to seek advice from an accredited exercise physiologist, you can find it on the ESSA website. If you just look up ESSA, find exercise physiologist, you'll be able to find someone locally who can help you. We're university educated, kind of qualified allied health professionals who are used to helping people to, achieve their fitness goals or their health goals. And then the BEAT program, I don't want to spend too much time because I want to leave some time for questions here. But the BEAT program is an 8-week physical activity and lifestyle program delivered face-to-face and online. You guys may be familiar with this. Some of you may have even done it before. It's a fantastic program. It includes 2 1-hour sessions a week for those 8 weeks, an initial one-on-one and a final assessment as well. One of the best things about the BEAT program is that it's not just exercise, it's education as well. So every week you do a half-hour education session. And I think that's what's really important and achieves that kind of longer term benefit because we want that lifestyle change. So if you guys had any interest in doing that, you could scan either of these codes. Like I said, this presentation will be emailed out to you guys, I think, once the recording's finished. So you're welcome to head through the recording and just scan one of these codes to express any interest in doing a diabetes program. So jump on that. I highly recommend it. Just with referrals, there are 2 referrals that you can get for an exercise physiologist from your GP. One is for 5 sessions under a chronic disease management plan that you can get every 12 months. But if you're a type 2 diabetic, there's another referral that you can get separately that's for 8 group exercise sessions as well and initial assessments. So they're different referrals, and you can get both every 12 months or every calendar year. So I'd highly recommend that you guys do this as well. Home exercise is fantastic, but this kind of supervised exercise is really good, and it kind of does have that accountability too when you're booked in for an actual appointment. So highly recommend. The type 2 diabetes referral is definitely underutilized. I know some GPs aren't even aware of it. So please have a look into that if you can. Take-home messages. I know I've blabbed on a lot today, but basically we want to try to find what works for you and your lifestyle. So everyone's different. Everyone's got different time commitments, family, work, all that kind of thing. And everyone's got different maybe complications with their diabetes or health issues, fitness levels, all that kind of thing. But we want to also do, what we can, and what we enjoy is really important, because what we enjoy is what's going to be sustainable. And the other little take home is that any movement is better than no movement at all. I know I talked about a lot of different content today. We've got maybe 8 minutes or so to run through some questions now. So if you guys haven't already popped any into the question box, if you want to do so now, I might just give it a quick minute. I'm just going to stop sharing so that I can read some of those questions, and then I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Okay, awesome. So I can only see one question at the moment. Maybe I'll just check the chat as well. Looks like I've just got one question. That's fine. If you guys think of anything as we go, maybe just chuck them in. I had a really good question from Deb. So Deb said, I live with type 1 diabetes, and I'm finding my biggest issue is around when to exercise, taking into consideration insulin on board and type of exercise. If I do aerobic exercise, my blood glucose level drops rapidly, but if I'm doing resistance, my blood glucose level goes up and then drops several hours later. What can you suggest regarding timing of exercise? So that's a really, really good question, Deb. So with our blood glucose levels, for those who aren't aware, sometimes, typically low to moderate aerobic exercise can make our blood glucose levels drop in the short term. And if we're doing higher intensity resistance exercise, it can make our blood glucose levels go up. It's can be a bit of a stress kind of flight or flight response. So what I would suggest is, depending on your blood glucose levels prior to exercise, obviously we want to make sure that we're having some kind of carbohydrate meal before we're doing exercise, some kind of long acting carbohydrate. And if your blood glucose levels are, I don't know, for example, if they're starting at like a 12 or something that's a bit higher, it might be good to start off doing your aerobic exercise at the beginning of the workout. If aerobic exercise is making your blood glucose levels drop rapidly, then maybe we need to start with a bit of a lighter intensity and work into it. And I guess on the flip side of that, if your blood glucose levels are starting really low, hopefully high enough for us to exercise, so say they're a 6 or 5.5 or something like that, we might need to have a long-lasting carbohydrate snack as well. But maybe doing resistance exercise at the very beginning of the workout might be important to bring those blood glucose levels up a little bit and kind of maintain that more stable blood glucose levels throughout the session. So hopefully that answered your question, Deb. I know it's a bit tricky, especially when we're taking insulin. It might be good to have a chat with your endocrinologist or with your GP regarding that, or going to see an EP for more specific one-on-one advice. Deb also said that Beat It was brilliant, which I totally agree with. Beat It's a fantastic program that you guys should all look into. What else do we have? Where can I find TheraBand? Rob asks. So TheraBands, you can find them online. So, things like eBay or whatever. But if you're looking for somewhere that you can go and grab one, typically they're all, at Kmart. They should have TheraBands. But also, if you've got like a local physio clinic or a private hospital or something like that that has a rehab section, you should just be able to walk in and just ask whether you can buy a band. Typically, that costs $10 or less for a band. I'd recommend maybe maybe a red or a green to get you started, depending on your strength level. If you're a bit stronger, maybe a blue, but it depends on what type of exercise you're trying to do. So there's lots of ways you can pick them up, but typically for less than $10, and you might want to buy a couple of different resistance levels as well. Wendy said she's on insulin and she's struggling to lose weight. How can she kind of achieve that? So with weight loss, and it's tricky when we're on insulin as well, or if we're a type 1 diabetic, but when we're on insulin, it kind of complicates things a little bit, which is why it's good to go and get more specific, maybe one-on-one advice from an exercise physiologist where they can do a proper assessment and look at your fitness level and that kind of thing. But essentially, we need to have that kind of calorie imbalance. So we need to have more calories kind of out than the calories that we're taking in. So seeing an accredited dietitian might be really important too, because diet is really important when it comes to weight loss. I know exercise has been the focus of today's session, and exercise is a useful tool that we can use to lose weight, but really diet is probably the most important thing when it comes to losing weight. Maybe go and book in with an accredited dietitian to discuss some kind of plan in terms of meals and what foods might be better for you to kind of consume in terms of losing weight, and the exercise can just be an additional kind of bonus to that in terms of the calories that we're burning. But it does complicate things when we're on insulin. Awesome. Erin, I'm not sure. I think that might be, or we have maybe one question in the chat. Someone said that they have a heart condition. Do they have to control rapid exercises? So if you have a heart condition, it might be good to go and get that individualized exercise advice from an AEP before you jump into exercise. It's tricky, obviously, for me to say now, and I don't want to give you really specific advice. But when we have heart condition, it might be more important to work at a lower intensity. So walking at a lighter intensity as opposed to a more intense intensity where we're breathing really heavily, at least as a starting point. And with our resistance exercises, it's really important not to do any breath holding. So we call it the Valsalva maneuver, where we're kind of increasing that pressure in our chest. If you have any kind of heart condition or any retinopathy, you may want to avoid doing overhead resistance movements as well, because that can, cause spikes in our blood pressure and that kind of thing. So have a chat to your GP or to an exercise physiologist, maybe for some more specific advice specific to your heart condition. How are we going for time, Erin? I think we're at 11 o'clock on the dot. Sorry, you're muted at the moment. Sorry.
Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm happy to go for as long as you and the attendees are, the members are. Yeah, we're at 11:01. Yeah.
Great. I think that's all the questions that people have asked at the moment. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today for the presentation. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two, and you might have a bit more of a plan about how you can implement exercise into your daily routine. So thanks so much for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you in some future presentations as well.
I might just quickly say, sorry, before everyone heads off, that you can contact us, as I said earlier, united@diabetesaustralia.com.au. The email address you would all have, it's the one that we send our monthly newsletters from, and the forum emails for some of the members here. Or you can call us on 1-800-177-055 if you want to speak to a health professional. They can usually call you back within 1 business day. I'll just end the recording now. And then I just wanted to remind you about